Hey guys, Ash here coming at you today with what is a re-emergence of air episode now that we have level 4 lava hounds and level 7 balloons. I think air is actually viable in the late game again, so I'm going to show you some examples of how to attack different types of bases. I'm even going to show you a fail by yours truly, and we'll kind of analyze what went wrong. By the way, just use the donate now feature. I know that's going to be a topic of quite a lot of controversy. The community seems to be exploding with negativity around the donate now. To a dirty gemmer like yours truly, I actually kind of like the feature, but I would prefer us not to have to gem the resources. That way it wouldn't be so expensive, because although it is actually a very, very small deal because you're gemming the resources, you're not expending your own, it is very pricey still. It's much cheaper just to go ahead and cook up the troop yourself and gem the finish time. But anyway, let's get into a live attack here. I digress. Back to the subject at hand in today's video, and the idea here, I kind of just zoomed in on all the air defenses. The idea here is to use your king and your queen to take out the most accessible air defense on the base. Now, I always bring 4 wall breakers. Don't really have an issue using the wall breakers here. Sometimes the king goes around, but that's really okay. More often than not, your queen's going to be the one to take down that air defense. Just be careful you don't accidentally trigger the clan castle, because then a lava hound or a golem or something with a lot of hit points can actually take down your queen before she takes down that air defense. Now, from then on out, you want to go ahead and allocate your 5 golems. You have 1 in the clan castle, and you cooked up 4 yourself, and you want to basically cover 2 of the remaining air defenses with those 5 golems. I like to do 3 towards the first air defense, and then 2 towards the second air defense. You want to do a slight delay between the 2 lava hounds, and then you just pepper in those balloons, depending on the number of point defenses and splash damage behind those areas that you're trying to clear. Now, you can see here, I'm actually able to just sneak in some balloons on the back end here because it's very light defensively in the southern part of this base, and it's as easy as that, guys. I don't want to oversimplify things, but at the same time, I also don't want to overcomplicate things. I will be showing you plenty of replays in today's episode, and we'll really get inside the nitty-gritty of how to attack a more challenging base, as well as some anti-3-star designs versus a trophy base, stuff like that. And like I said, we are going to go ahead and hop into a fail next and just cover where I went wrong. Hopefully you don't make the same mistake, and the stakes were high, unfortunately, as it was a war attack, so you don't see a lot of people sharing failed raids. I've always tried to share failed raids when I have them. Well, not all of them, obviously, but I try to share them when I can, when I think it will be a valuable resource to you guys, and we'll definitely go ahead and do that. That's definitely a main source of criticism, not towards my channel, but to YouTube in general, and rightfully so in many cases, that, hey, you're only seeing the highlight raids, guys. You're not seeing all the fails. So I do try to put in some fails to help you guys out, and I guess in a way it's a little cathartic for me as well. So before we do that, check out my base right now. It's a very tricky base design, and it's certainly a very popular base design. I have no idea where it originated. It's not my own base design, but I have not been 2-starred in the wild since I've been using this base. Only been a few days, but it's been 5 or 6 attacks that I've either defended or gotten a 1-star. It's just so tricky to funnel your troops around that center, around that core of the base. By the way, if you want to copy it, go ahead and take a look. Now, later on in this episode, I will show you how to 3-star this base using Penta LaLoon as well. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but first I want to hop right into that fail I talked about. It was in this war, so unfortunately the stakes were high, and yours truly totally choked. So let's go ahead to Battle Day and dig out this raid, and we'll analyze where I went wrong. And upon watching this replay a couple times now, there are really 3 areas that if I had to do it over, I would have done so. So one is the entry point, right? So I got a little greedy, and I thought that maybe I could take down this queen as well as that air defense, all with my king and my queen, and I failed in doing that. And I since have changed my spell selection and my entire strategy when I hit a base like this, one of these ring bases with that kind of open core. So stay tuned for that later on in the video. So my barbarian king kind of reroutes to the center there, so that was good. I did take out the enemy queen, but that's really not your #1 objective with these heroes in these Penta LaLoon raids, right? So your main objective is to take down 1 air defense, and then secondary, taking out the queen, is a total bonus. But you need to take down an air defense, or at least you'd really like to, and then from there on out, I make another mistake. So #1, didn't get the air defense down. Number 2, I send 3 hounds in on my initial southwest side, and then I send 2 hounds in my northwest side, which is all fine. But the real issue here was my balloon deployment. I put way too many balloons in the, because I was worried about that Inferno Tower, so I put way too many balloons in the southwest, and instead I went really light with the balloons in the west. You can see at 9 o'clock I have to deploy a couple more balloons onto that wizard tower, and that screws my timing all off. Eventually those balloons are going to get to the center, but I wanted to clone all the balloons and have them clumped up when they got to the center at the same time. That way they could all benefit from my Grand Warden's Eternal Tome ability, and then I'd have the clone balloons on rage, I'd have the rest of the balloons, they'd be invulnerable, and then they get all the way to that Inferno Tower, I'd freeze it, and everything would be awesome. Instead, I was really late on those balloons. I deployed too few balloons to 9 o'clock. The third mistake of the raid was that 5th back-end Lava Hound. I should have deployed him around 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock. That was way too far east, and then I left a Wizard Tower and an Archer Tower up on the board. All in all, an awful raid by yours truly. Very, very, very bad raid. So I really want to forget that memory, and I'm going to show you now how I prefer hitting these type of bases instead. Now, this is not the same base, but it is the same idea with the air defenses and the heroes along the edges of the map, and this is what I prefer now. Now, I was lucky the queen actually jumped outside, but either way, I would have easily taken out the queen. I'm actually using a couple miners. That's really just me trying to experiment with the miners rather than a necessity on these type of attacks. So I take down the enemy queen. I did not get an air defense, but it's okay because now you can see I'm not bringing a clone spell against these type of bases. Rather, I'm bringing 2 lightnings and 1 earthquake. Now, I zap quaked that northwest air defense, and that's going to allow me to deploy the 3 hounds on one side, the 2 hounds on the other side, and then the hounds will migrate towards that only remaining air defense right through the center of the map, and therefore triggering any air bombs that might be in the center, as well as, obviously, more importantly, providing cover for the rest of my balloons. Now, let's talk a little bit about the deployment of this strategy in general, right? So, you do hit the base kind of from 2 angles, sometimes 3 if you have a back-end Lava Hound. Obviously, you have 5 Lava Hounds at your disposal here, and you can even take 4 Lava Hounds on some attacks. You can even take 6. I've actually seen 6 Lava Hounds work as well, but usually if you bring 6, you run into the issue of them not popping at the end. You'll see I already run into this issue only bringing 5, so that's why I think 5 is really that sweet spot against most bases. You can see on this raid here, because I used the Zap Quake on that northwest air defense, 2 of my hounds actually haven't popped yet, but that's okay because they're going to go ahead and provide some nice cover fire for those remaining balloons that have clumped up. I still have 1 balloon that I'm going to use on these wizard towers as soon as they get in range there, so there goes the last balloon to take down that last wizard tower. I would always hold off on at least 1 balloon, sometimes up to 4 for the back end to help out on those last remaining defenses, especially if they're a wizard tower, providing that cover from the splash damage or that distraction from that splash damage. So there you have it, another 3-star. This is going to be against an anti-3-star base, and again, we're going to go for the most easily accessible air defense here, and this time I'm going to deploy my Grand Warden with the first clump of Lava Hounds and balloons because we're going to go into this base in an area that's really hot and heavy with defensive units. So I did trigger the clan castle there, not exactly what you'd want to do in an ideal scenario, but I go ahead and use both my hero abilities early on there, basically just trying to take down that golem that was in that defensive clan castle. So I finally get my queen onto that air defense, and while she's still alive, I'll go ahead and start the second phase of the attack. So 3 Lava Hounds at that first air defense. I'm going to drop my Warden right away with those balloons. You can see the balloons in groups of 2 or 3 for each defensive unit. I want to make sure I take out that splash damage, and then here come my next 2 Lava Hounds at that northeast air defense, backed up again by a group of about 6 to 8 balloons, and then I'm going to start using my spells. I do have the clone spell, love the clone spell, especially in air attacks. Actually, I love it in air and ground attacks. You guys know probably if you watched the last 3 or 4 videos I've done how much I love the clone spell. So here you can kind of pick and choose, right? So you have the Grand Warden's Eternal Tome ability, you have your free spell, and you have your clone spell. You want to make sure you get the timing right on your spells and your rage spell. So the idea here is when you use the Eternal Tome ability, you never want that to be at the same time of your freeze spell. So you're using the Eternal Tome ability separately than the freeze spell, obviously, because it's kind of like a built-in freeze spell. Now, it's also a great idea to go ahead and use the Eternal Tome ability right after you use the clone spell. So essentially, you're going to use a rage right off the bat, usually on the balloons that are going into an area that is the most defensively dense. For example, if you're going into an Inferno Tower early on, you can use the rage spell right there from the get-go. The other rage spell, you essentially want to get a combination of the following going in the core of the base. You want to drop the clone, you want to drop the rage, and then you want to hit the Eternal Tome ability, so you essentially have that extra 35 troop space that's all going to be protected by that Eternal Tome ability, and that is the beautiful thing about the clone spell. Not only does it allow you to replicate 35 troop space, 35 housing space, but it allows you, the attacker, to dictate exactly where you want to replicate it. So that's why you use it in the core, the most important part of the base. On an air attack, it also gives you a little bit of flexibility, right? So when you're attacking, sometimes some of the balloons might go off in an area where you didn't intend them to be. Balloon pathing is notoriously difficult to track at times, or you can plan it till you're blue in the face, but sometimes some balloons just head in a direction that you just didn't anticipate. That's one of the beautiful things about Friendly Challenge, by the way. So what you can do is you can find those balloons that, oh no, this clump of balloons is heading in the right direction, but there's not enough of them. That's why you can use that clone spell to replicate those balloons, and those extra 7 balloons are going to really help out a lot in those 16 seconds that they're alive, especially if you can combine them with that Rage and Eternal Tome ability. So that is really the combo that you're going for. And again, this attack here by Arrow shows my base, as I promised earlier in the video, my base being destroyed. It's a very popular base design, and basically what you're going to do is enter in with your heroes around 9 o'clock, use a few wall breakers to get the BK in there, try to take down 2 air defenses if possible. You can see that Arrow was not able to take down 2 air defenses, but he still played it cool, calm, and collected, and then just slowly trickled in those lava hounds starting at around 9 o'clock, then moving counterclockwise, and you can see it works out really well for him. Being very, very patient here, deploying the Grand Warden on the back end very late into this attack, but that's going to be beautiful here. He does have a large group of balloons all clumped up behind that lava hound. Plenty of pups still on the board. Now, if you run into a clan castle that doesn't present any issue to your air attack, so like let's say it's a golem or Valkyries or witches or something, you can go ahead and use your poison on the opposing Archer Queen, the defending Archer Queen. That's going to dramatically slow her rate of fire, and to be honest with you, Archer Queen along with the 4 air defenses are some of your biggest worries, I guess, in the Eagle Artillery on these Penta LaLoon attacks. So certainly use that poison spell on that Archer Queen. And guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang out with me for a little bit. Stay tuned for a quick take on baby dragons coming up tomorrow morning. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care.